Man. Get this board cleaned up. Peace to the family. Peace to the peace to the fam. Right? They had a fight. I didn't even know if the fight went down. I did not even know if the fight went down. Hold on for a second. I didn't even know that the fight went down. I thought that was some Saturday night or the 5th. Get out of here, lady. Thank you. I didn't even know that went down yet. Yeah, I didn't even know that went down yet. Yeah, I was happy. Every so often when I'm waiting for books, like multiple books, Amazon will send me a pleasant surprise, and they'll like stick my most current order in with older stuff. So I got these bad boys, and I got super hype all in one shot. It was crazy. It was crazy. I got the mother load all in one box. I got the Neferland Propulsion Lab, right? The Ebers Papyrus Volume 6. The Neferland Propulsion Lab Math, right? I got that. I got the Biblical Freemasonry book. I got this all in one box. I got the Jed Pillar book. Oh my goodness. I got the Pump and Iron book. And then I got the Medicine book all in one box. That was epic because this came fast. Yeah, they just, I guess they tired of me. I think that's what that means. Like, yo, we tired of him. You know what I'm saying? Throw that in the box. Yeah, that's his. Here, fling that in there. That's him. That's him. Just flip that in there too. Oh man, because I wasn't supposed to get this. I wasn't supposed to get these books, Pumping Iron and the Medicine book, for a good bit of time. You know how that go. I wasn't supposed to get that for a good bit of time. And we had a section in the book, right? We had a section in the book talking about evolution, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. And on top of that, over the past few days, a couple of people have sent me a debate by two sisters. And I was originally going to react like directly to the debate. But I had wise counsel tell me that I should refrain from doing a direct reaction video to the for doing a direct reaction video to the debate. At least in the way that I was going to do it. At least in the way that I was going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So wise counsel. You know what I'm saying? Wise counsel. Like when you see, have y'all seen the movie Sinners? Because this was the analogy that I was given today. Have you seen the movie Sinners? Remember, the vampires can't just come into your house, right? You gotta invite them in. They need permission to come in, right? So that was the wise counsel that I received. Like, yo, don't. Let those ladies have their fun, right? Let those ladies have their fun. Let the people who are enjoying that conversation enjoy that conversation. Not yet. Oh man, it's an instant classic. That's an instant classic. I'm happy for them. Michael B. Jordan and the director guy and everybody that was a part of that. Like that's an instant classic. And it seemed like the movie dropped right at the right time when it was supposed to, because it's no real competition in the box office to go against that movie. Like, perfect time to drop that movie. Perfect time. Thunderbolts is, I ain't gonna say trash, but Thunderbolts is not it. So if you're somebody who was thinking like, oh, I'm getting ready to take myself or take my children or take my family or go out with the like whatever. If you was getting ready to go to the movies and spend a few dollars, Thunderbolts is not it. Like, if you're thinking in your mind what I'm gonna go see, Thunderbolts is not the selection. Yeah, I would not go see Thunderbolts. I would pay to go take my children to see Sneakers before I go see Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts ain't it. Sinners though, fire. Sinners is good. Sinners is good. And they tried as much as possible to overlay a bunch of different concepts. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Some of the stuff looks a little, you'll see when you see it. You know what I'm saying? But overall, like, that was a good movie. That was a good movie for a vampire movie. I mean, it's not like they trying to change the world or cure cancer. You know what I'm saying? But for a vampire movie, it was dope. Yeah. It was dope. It was a good vibe. It was definitely a good vibe. Thunderbolts was disappointing, to say the best. At best, Thunderbolts was disappointing. Like there's nothing else you could say about Thunderbolts but that it was disappointing. When the movie go off, you like, yo, what happened to the movie? You like, yo, what happened to the movie? Yeah, the Thunderbolts wasn't it. Thunderbolts was not it. All right, so let's review Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Right? Let's review Charles Darwin's theory of evolution real quick. Let's see what we can do here. Charles Darwin's theory. Because, I mean, low key, you know, I'm the guy who has destroyed this and destroyed some YouTube careers along with destroying Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. I have destroyed some YouTube careers. There are still people that are very angry with me right now. There's people that are actively hate, like if you just say my name to them, their whole countenance changes and they get immediately infuriated. Just at the sound of my name, they get infuriated. Like, but it's because of the Charles Darwin theory of evolution, you know, and I never had any personal beef with anybody with the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like over the years, there have been people that come along and want to challenge me scientifically. And so I could tell at the outset that some people don't understand. Like they don't have a understanding. Right? So I'm trying to phrase this. A plus B equals J. All right? Where J equals 17, A equals 10, and B equals 8. Right? A plus B equals J, where A equals 10, B equals 8, and J equals 17. This is a scientific theory, right? This is a scientific theory. This is a hypothetical experiment to try to give you an analogy of what I've been dealing with over the years. This is a scientific theory. A plus B equals J. Those are variables. The numbers they represent, 10, 8, and 17. Some of the people over the years that I've engaged in this conversation with, when we're debating, whether this is science or not, right? They're arguing this is science because someone said so. I'm arguing this is not science because 10 plus 8 does not equal 17. You see what I'm saying? Right? But in a weird, like kindergarten, kind of like illiterate, kind of like I don't understand sense, they are correct. It is science because it has been postulated as a scientific theory, right? So if I come along and say it's not science, technically they could have a point by saying I'm wrong. You see what I'm saying? So I've got to a point where I could even understand like the nonsense, and that gets spooky because once you start to understand nonsense, once you start to understand nonsense, you're like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? Like you're in a dangerous place, right? But that's kind of what it is. Like, oh, okay. So because Charles Darwin done threw this out there, whoop, and some folks was jacking it, they like, yep, this is, yeah, we riding with this, I just didn't see how black folks wound up teaching it. That's where it got crazy to me. I can understand some European folks teaching it. Like I understand, listen, and to me, it's not insulting. Racism is not an insulting thing to me. It's part of nature. It's not, so I don't take offense immediately to, like, it's like bumblebees want bumblebees to be on top of the world, or lions want lions to be on top of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a natural thing to want to be the best. And then you want your family to be the best of all families. And then you want your whatever to be the best of all whatevers. And that extends out. So that's kind of just a natural thing, right? The prejudice and trying to do other stuff and all the other stuff, that's where it gets a little crazy. You know what I'm saying? But I just didn't understand what black folks was like, teaching an outdated model. You know what I'm saying? Because here's the other piece. First of all, there's a level of flexibility that the evolutionists get that no other group or people that have promoted a concept in history have gotten ever. I don't care what the concept is. Nobody has ever been proven wrong more times than evolutionists, and then get to remake their theory and then present it again. Like they just keep remixing it and remixing it and remixing it and remixing it and remixing it. So when I saw initially, when I initially saw the folks that was teaching it, and they were calling themselves black militants and black power people and all these other things, I immediately gravitated to the conversation as opposition, simply because of the godlessness attached to it. That was my, that was my thing. Like, and so that was kind of like, people still probably don't understand that. So that's where there's people that, they take a personal affront because they may feel like, what I'm saying? But my thing was way different than most, more nuanced than anybody that was having the conversation, because the conversation is about Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and real science and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, first of all, the moment you present it as the theory of evolution, it's a remix. When you present it as Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, it's a remix, right? In order to really have the conversation, we need to go back to the real conversation, right? We need to go back to the real conversation. And let me see if I can pull that up here. Let me see if I can find. Let me see this here. Okay, here we go. Here's the original book, right? Here's the original, or a copy anyway, of the original book. So I know some of y'all may not understand what I'm talking about. There you go. I'm trying to make it as big as possible. Okay. On the origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of a favored races in the struggle for life. So right there, we gotta cut the, like that's so soon as any type of moving away from this is a remix. So we have to start right there. Right? The favored races and all that. So that we don't lose the bias in the conversation, right? Because some people that don't really know the conversation, the moment you introduce race into the conversation, they believe that you're bringing like the moment I bring race into it or mention black militants or black power or whatever, some people can't understand my perspective on that. They're like, what does that have to do with science or not? Well, the book is written by and for racists. It is a book to describe the foundations of racism or white supremacy in a scientific framework. Like that's the whole purpose of the book. The purpose of the book wasn't to teach wasn't necessarily to teach advancement or whatever the case may be. It was to have scientific principles to justify large-scale conquering, colonization, slavery, you name it, right? So this is why on a scholarly level, the theory has been thoroughly debunked 1,000 different ways. So for me, again, my thing was the godlessness attached to it, right? Because a part of the theory was to go against the concept of God and all this other stuff, atheism. So this is where atheists kind of grabbed onto it because it was like a opposite to intelligent design. Something they could hold on to, right? And But it just was crazy to me to see, people still, and this is, mind you, I'm talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about late 90s, early 2000s. So when people send me this video of the sisters, Neftali and the other lady, right? We're just going to call her other lady, right? Neftali and the other lady having this debate in 2025. It was kind of crazy for me to listen to it. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I couldn't. You know what I'm saying? It was too much of a landslide anyway. Like it was, I don't even know how somebody is trying to teach. You just look and sound crazy, especially as a Black person. Like literally, it reminds me, anytime I hear it, it reminds me of the Dave Chappelle joint with the Dave Chappelle had on the Klan's mask and he was the black guy, the Black Klansman. That's the only thing I see. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only thing I see. It just seems crazy. And then there's Kanye, right? And then there's Kanye. Yeah, so there's that, right? So it got debunked. So that's where they removed the favored races part from it, right? And said, okay, we're going to run with this part still, right? But the favored races part is the basis of the whole theory, right? So the favored races part is the basis of the whole theory, right? And trust me, we're going to get into the mitochondria part and all that. Trust me, that's coming. But the favored races part, like that's the basis of it. And that's the part that it seems like the Black community caught a hold to, and they kind of like championing it because it was created in a deceptive way to piggyback onto some things that Black folks were already like, we built the pyramids, we're the Africans, we are the Egyptians, blah, blah, blah. We came first and all this, the original man, right? So if you're from the school of Elijah Muhammad or this or that, the core concept fit in perfectly smooth. So it was a perfect Trojan horse, right? A perfect Trojan horse. You see what I'm saying? And not at inception. I'm talking about just how it got to where it is today, right? Because there's no Elijah Muhammad and Charles Darwin's, right? So Black folk, it just adapted perfect. Like, oh yeah, we came out of Africa, and yeah, as we left Africa and we start walking around all over the planet, we start turning white and red and yellow, and yeah, because we was walking around and we lost our way back home and we got caught in the ice and woo woo woo, and then we turned white. And they like, that's science right there. I'm like, that's not science. You gotta, that's A plus B equals J, where A equals 10, B equals 8, and J equals 17. Yeah. Somebody said that and you repeated it because you heard somebody that you respect their credentials say this. So you repeated it, and people have repeated it, and you thought people were repeating it because they didn't have an agenda, but they have an agenda. So that's why they're repeating it. Even if that agenda is just to collect the check every 2 weeks, like they still have an agenda, right? So that's how it got, out of Africa theory began to take on leg of its own, right? But it initially is a part of this. So out of Africa theory, for the people that don't know, starts off as a part of Charles Darwin's theory of superior races and blah, 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 right? And the theory is first you have the monkeys, right? First you have the monkeys, and then you have the Africans, and then you have white folks. And right there, the black folks that's allergic to books, oh, they cheering. Oh yeah, look, that's it right there. Yeah, that's the truth right there, because we came first. Yeah, we're superior because we came first. That's it right there. I'd be honestly, like, I sometimes be beginning to think that the reading rainbow was only in the Bronx, only on my TV. Because when I was, when I was a child, I was watching the reading rainbow. I'm like, yo, 3, 2, 1 contact. I'm like, yo, clearly this must have been like a local New York television station, because man, I can tell. Some of you folks as children had a lot of toys. You just had toys, and I guess y'all just had parents that had a few dollars and they just got y'all toys. Because as adults, whoo. Only thing I could say is you could have used a few less toys. Woo. You could have used a few less toys. Yeah. You needed a book or two. Yeah, a book or two. Because that's not how it goes, right? And then, as the theory grew, and let me say this, as the theory got debunked, they start to add new things into it, right? So, first it goes monkeys, black folks, white folks. That's the basis of it, right? And the idea is that there's no God. So there is no God, intelligent design creating. So that's the beef. There's no God in this theory. This is the abiogenesis theory. So you hear people saying abiogenesis, that's a part of this program. So just know abiogenesis, and what abiogenesis means, in case you don't know what abiogenesis means, because you're listening to remix artists, what abiogenesis means is that there was 2 rocks in outer space, and the rocks bump into each other like this, and by mistake those rocks started to making stuff, and then it made into a planet, and more rocks start bumping into it by mistake, and then made water, and then more rocks start bumping into the rock that had water on it, and then that bumping into just made a whole cell. And then before you know it, more rocks start bumping into each other, and then they made animals, like just rocks bumping into each other with no information. Key, no information, no intelligence in the design, right? No intelligence in the design, right? So abiogenesis and all of that kind of stuff, all of that's a part of this, right? All of that's a part of this. So, and this is important because we're getting ready to get into cancer and some other stuff, right? Because modern science totally demolishes this. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to the sister Neftali. I thought she did a good job quoting Dr. Inky during her debate. Yeah. She did a good job of watching my old videos and delivering, But so the whole idea is that nature, right? The evolution theory, right, is that because there's no intelligent design, right, stuff is just creating, and then stuff is mutating into better stuff. And as stuff mutates into better stuff, it's the job of the better stuff to put the other stuff into slavery, bondage, etc. Because the better stuff knows better, right? So for instance, it was the job of the Black African to restrain, enslave, curtail the monkeys, right? Because we knew better than them. We were better suited to build civilization, so we can put them to work for us. And they don't need to be paid for it or anything like that, because their pay is they get to live in a better world that, we're creating, right? Because, we're the next level up from the monkeys. And so now here's white folks. And so white folks get to put us under their foot, right? Like we put the monkeys under our foot because they're better and smarter, and they get to, our reward is we get to live in their world that they're going to create. Our manpower, their brains, right? And so people kind of just grabbed what they felt worked for them from the theory and discarded the rest as people started to debunk it, right? And so early on in the conversations of this, it's a lot of talk about God and love of God and science and love of science. So I'm going to say probably the first 100 years or so of the debate between the evolutionists and the intelligent design communities aren't really filled with much information. It's not really much information. The God-loving folks are passionate, so they just talking Adam and Eve in the garden stuff. And the science folks are just as ignorant and as passionate, right? So they just holding fast that there's no fat white man that lives up in the clouds. And so they're changing the whole argument. They're not even arguing about the creation from an intelligent design. They're basically saying you need to prove that God exists in order to prove there's an intelligent design, which is not exactly even a part of the conversation, right? So like I said, the first 100 years or so of the conversation's pretty fruitless, right? It's just back and forth, right? As the conversation continues to go on, right? As the conversation becomes more scholarly, right? Certain aspects of the conversation change the idea of it just destroys the conversation forever. And this is where I get a little perturbed sometimes when I even see the conversation still coming up, right? Because it means that people are not reading, and there's if you're having this debate, it means that you're like at least 50 years to 100 years behind like society as a whole, right? Especially if you think it's like a cutting edge, like, oh, yo, they going in on this. Like, bro, they're not going in on that. That's old gobbledygook. That's not a thing, right? So where did things change at? Where did things change at? Well, here's a couple of places. Here's a couple of places that changed the conversation forever. Not changed. I'll just say dug Darwin up out of the grave, killed him, and then put him back into the grave. Right? Neanderthal DNA I gotta find my good marker. Where did my good marker go? Right? Didn't I have a fresh, crispy? Is this? Is it you? Let me see if it's you. Oh yeah, this is it right here. Yeah. Okay. So let's pretend like I didn't write that and write that again. Neanderthal DNA. And mutation theory. Why are you always sneaking around to watch me, lady? Kylie thinks she's my advisor. Right? So, Neanderthal DNA. So, for a long time, to justify the conversation, remember, monkeys, black folks, then white folks. In that line, right? So, we all come from monkeys, but white folks come from black folks, and black folks, we're the direct connect to the monkeys, right? And so as this conversation develops, they come with more nuances to the conversation. As they're getting debunked, they remix and add things in, right? They remix and add in the term hominid, right? They throw that in there, hominid. They add hominid in there. They add great ape into the convo, and all these are additions to the convo as specific parts of the convo are being debunked, right? Because originally, it's monkeys, black folks, white folks. Then there's monkeys, missing link, black folks, white folks, right? Right. See, there's these terms you don't even hear anymore, right? Because they were debunked. And once they get debunked, they pull that out and slip a new one in, and short-term memory, you don't forgot that. So it's monkeys, black folks, white folks. Then it becomes monkeys, missing link, black folks, white folks, right? And missing link, synonymous with caveman. Missing link, synonymous with caveman. Caveman and missing link become synonymous with Neanderthal, right? And so Neanderthal, like, that was an insult for a long time. Neanderthal was an insult. Like, you acting like a Neanderthal. Like, that was an insult. They probably didn't use that as much in black communities, but there's a time when Neanderthal was like idiot, brute, savage. Like, it was synonymous with those terms, right? So they would use, call you a Neanderthal, and during the Margaret Sanger, Hitler, that time period, because remember, Hitler is the student of America, Margaret Sanger and all of them. So when they're practicing eugenics, which is sterilizing black folks, right? And then after sterilizing black folks, non-whites, right? Which is where it got spooky, because white folks is like, wait a minute. I'm a white person. I'm a non-white person. Like, white groups of white folks couldn't believe it. They was chilling, like, they just regular going to work, partying, doing their thing. And then they got declared like non-white folks. So they're like, wait, what? They coming to get us? When that? See, when you was letting them get us, you was cool. When they was just getting us, you was cool. Then as soon as they start getting you too, then we've got to stop this injustice. Right? So they're like, look, that's where 3/5 of a man, Dred Scott case and all this stuff come in, because technically we supposed to be, because that was the running theory. And they used to show pictures of black folks next to gorillas, black folks next to gorillas and all that. They had zoos where they would have gorillas in one cage and black folks in a cage next to the gorillas. Yeah, and be like, look, and they would be there breaking down Charles Darwin's theory of evolution in front of the cage. When they had black folks in the zoo, they would stand in front of the cage and break down the exhibit with Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So if you look at the nose, you see the flared nostril. And so this is something from the African species as we're transitioning from the great ape to the Neanderthal. And so a lot of these Africans, even today, you see, they're uneducatable. You understand their savage ways have carried over. So they really understand only food and sex and violence. And so your man Joe Biden. Your man Joe Biden passed laws that your man Jabari Usa. See, this is why I had wise counsel told me don't even open this door. So anyway, Neanderthal DNA was supposed to be black folks, right? Now, what happened to that whole story of the Neanderthals? What happened? Technology got advanced, right? Technology got advanced, and they actually start testing folks. They start testing haplotypes and clans and clades, and lo and behold, they find out Neanderthal DNA exists, but black folks. God is a full-time comedian. Listen, they found out that Neanderthal DNA does exist, but black folks doesn't have any Neanderthal DNA. Except for like black folks that's mixed with white folks. Like Africans, they don't have Neanderthal DNA. Charles Darwin's theory had been destroyed 10,000 times before that moment. But in that moment, it wasn't like, not even a Marvel alternative universe could have, like, that was it. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Charles Darwin's theory back together again. That was it. They're like, wait a minute. So you saying there's a lot of folks that's still uncomfortable with that one. It's still folks that's uncomfortable with that. And only reason they're uncomfortable with that is because of the 200 to 300 years that they made it so disdainful and distasteful and used it as a license for all kind of abuses against black folks and non-whites. They say, oh, you're a Neanderthal. You got Neanderthal DNA, so you're subhuman. So now turn around, when you have the discussion, be like, well, only Europeans, Russia, Europe, Germany, y'all the only folks that got Neanderthal. Well, a little Asia too. Asians got some, like pretty much everybody except for Africans got Neanderthal. Now it's like a cuss word. It's almost like saying your mama. You be like, yo, you got Neanderthal DNA. That's like you said a bad thing about somebody's mama. Like they insulted. Like, bruh, you came up with all this. How you mad? You invented all this. Nobody was even thinking about this. Nobody's thinking about these classifications, this term. You invented all this. So anyway, that was a death-defying. That was it right there. That was a nuclear bomb dropped on the Charles Darwin's theory, like, right? But there's another moment that was more damaging. Listen, more damaging, but lesser discussed, lesser popularized. See, when that came out, that white folks had Neanderthal DNA, that went viral because that came out in the YouTube era. That went viral because it was shocking. And then there was a white professor that was releasing the information. So white folks was even mad at this white guy for teaching it. Like, we don't care if you found out. Who told you to tell? Like how Kanye released that song Cousin. Folks is like, yo, we don't care if that's true or not. You were supposed to keep that to yourself. Listen, nobody told you to start telling that. You were supposed to ride that out. That's how folks was looking at that white professor. Like, listen, we don't care who came up with what. You supposed to have. What are you doing? Like, you wasn't supposed to let. Huh? What are you? You were supposed to hold on to that. So that went viral, right? But the mutation theory, when that bomb dropped, that was like silent. That was like only in the scientific spaces. And, it didn't really seep out to the masses. Unless you was in the scientific community and like reading the articles and the journals and watching like professors debate and getting into those type of that level of discussion, you didn't hear about this, right? So here's what happened to the mutation theory, right? Once technology advanced, we learned one single fact that destroyed the mutation theory aspect of Charles Darwin's theory forever. Mutations in genetic material are one directional. They only lead to loss of genetic information. That's it. Mutation is loss of genetic information. There are still people to this day that do not understand what that means. Loss of genetic information, because they don't understand what's required for, say, for instance, a reptile to become a bird, right? They don't understand that there has to be new genetic information introduced into the reptile. If Charles Darwin's theory, like if this is the world of abiogenesis, right? So sometimes evolutionists, because a lot of them don't read and they just passion is driving their argument, they borrow intelligent design in order to prop up their argument. And they're not even smart enough to know when they're doing that, right? This is one of those instances. And be like, oh, a reptile can evolve into a bird. Well, how does that happen? Genetic mutation. Now, because genetic mutation is a big term that they probably don't understand, they say that and then sit back like they just did something like genetic mutation. How does a reptile become a bird? Genetic mutation. That's not a thing, right? Because in order for a scale, like in order for a thing with scales to like grow wings, there has to be a whole bunch of new information introduced into that genome in order for that animal to build wings. Like there's a lot of information that has to go in, and not only information that has to go in, there are spatial and environmental cues that have to go in terms of when to build and what to do in particular environments. So there's a lot of information that's required for brand new body parts, right? And since mutation is one way, loss of information, you don't get a new species from an old species unless what you're saying is, even though there's loss of information, that somehow Like, say, for instance, let's go reptile to bird. Let's stick with that. Genetic mutation leads to loss of information, of genetic information from the reptile. In order for a reptile to lose information and then somehow become a bird, there has to be a reservoir of stored information in the reptile that already had all the information the reptile would need in order to become a bird. Even though it was a reptile, it would have to have had all this stored information of other creatures already in its own genome. And that is where they would be stealing the drip and relying on an intelligent design, because only in an intelligent design can a species have stored genetic data for other species on standby. Hold up, this body's no longer working for me. I'm gonna need to, like I'm hitting superhero mode. So yeah, I'm about to have some babies, but my babies won't be lizards. My babies will be eagles. Yeah, my babies will be eagles, or maybe they'll be pigeons so they can get free bread at the park. Like, yeah, I'm gonna just have stored. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna hit the button. We're just gonna hit the button. We're not gonna go from a lion to like a house cat. No. We could see how loss of information could kind of lead to that hypothetically. No. We're going from like a lizard to a falcon. Yeah, we're going from a lizard to a falcon. Yeah, or we're going from a chimp to a human. Yeah, we're going to lose information as a chimp, and then we're going to become a person, more intelligent. Yeah, we're going to lose information and become more intelligent. Right? So, listen, I know this is the uncomfortable conversation. Sometimes we got to have uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes we have to have uncomfortable conversations, right? It just is what it is, right? It just is what it is. So, Neanderthal DNA mutation theory, right? Destroyed the conversation 1,000 times. Right? Destroyed the conversation 1,000 times with much more smaller, nuanced arguments. Right? But these were game changers, right? Neanderthal DNA mutation theory. Right? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you two more game changers. We're going to give you two more game changers. Two more game changers. We're going to dig him up. Dig him up out of the ground. Kill him. And put him back in the ground. We're going to put the stake into Charles Darwin's heart. Like when you kill a vampire, they come back later unless you put a stake in their heart. We're going to put a stake. We're going to hit him with the sinner's treatment. Right? So, All right. So we got these two right here. We got Dr. Inky's theory of the fundamental forces. And then you have chimps versus genetic mutation. Chimps versus genetic mutation. Okay? So which one do y'all want to hear first? Which one of these should we roll out first? Chimps versus genetic mutation or Dr. Inky's theory of the fundamental forces? How should we do that? Let's go to the chat. I know it's Friday night. Folks all over the place. What you looking at? Which one should we do first? Dr. Inky's theory? Okay, well, Dr. Inky's theory is very short and sweet. Oh, you know what? That's funny. That's what Tika said. Tika said the same thing. Dr. Inky's theory. Okay, well, Dr. Inky's theory is super quick and short. It's literally, it takes a few seconds. The fundamental forces, the provable fundamental forces of the universe are electricity and magnetism. Electricity and magnetism. Electricity and magnetism, right? So let's say there is two rocks, right? Let's say the abiogenesis theory is happening. Rocks crashing into each other. Well, in order for rocks crashing into each other to actually make something, you would have to have a whole lot of different types of rocks crashing into each other, right? And there would have to be memory. There would have to be memory in order to reproduce things. The end. See how quick that was it. The end. The end. Dr. Inky's theory of fundamental forces. It's unbeatable. Like, wait a minute. Hold on, Doc. You're going to have to run that back and unpack that a little bit for us. You got to unpack that a little bit. Okay. In order for something to be made over and over and over again, there has to be memory of a recipe. Like, in order for you to go in the kitchen, right? In order for you to go in the kitchen and make cornbread the same way your grandma did, you have to have that recipe. You have to remember the ingredients and get them just right every single time, right? Memory is intelligent design. Memory is intelligence. So the fact that magnetism is one of the fundamental forces of the universe, that means that memory is one of the fundamental forces of the universe. Yeah. So that's what magnetism does. Store information. That's why we have hard drives. Hard drives are magnetic. Black strip on debit cards, credit cards, magnetic. Yeah, magnetism stores information. So because magnetism is one of the fundamental forces of the universe, memory is a fundamental aspect of the universe. Memory came into existence with magnetism. It's over. They have to debunk it. They would have to debunk magnetism itself in order to debunk intelligence from the universe. Can't separate the universe from magnetism. No theory can do that. Not plasma universe, not electric universe, not the Necharu, the Elohim, Jehovah, Buddha, Allah. Magnetism straight across the board. Right? So the moment that there is magnetism, there's memory. The moment you have an electron, you have an electric field. The moment you have an electric field, you have magnetism. Right? And think about how it works. The moment you have a moving charged particle, right? So let's say you have an electron, right? Let's go all the way there before you even get to a rock, because you can't get a rock, which is a mineral, which is composed of multiple elements. You can't get a rock until you have an element, more than one, at least, right? Or at least a bunch of one element, right? So you can't get an element till you have an atom. You can't have an atom without an electron, right? So we start with the first electron, and the first element is hydrogen, electron, proton, right? So the moment you have a charged particle, that charged particle has an electric field. The moment that charged particle moves, that moving electric field generates a magnetic field. Now, let's rewind that back. The moment you have a charged particle and that charged particle moves, that movement just created information. Wait a minute. So are you saying that Dr. Inky's theory from that information is synonymous with a magnetic? But we could condense it down, just make it a lot quicker. Magnetism, the end. How many words is that? The 3 words. Magnetism, the end. Right? Done. Right? So there's no way to actually get around God and use science, because science is saying the same thing as we are. Right? Science is saying the same thing we are. The moment that science acknowledges electricity or magnetism as one of the fundamental forces, it is saying that the world that we know of is created from intelligent design. There's no other way. There's no other way around that, right? All right. So that was quick and easy. Now we get to the book. Now we get to one of the chapters in the book. One of the chapters in the medicine book, right? And it was kind of meant to just be provocative, right? But I thought it was funny, right? I thought it was funny, right? So if you have your book already, you can open up the book to page 58, right? The title of the chapter is Cancer versus Charles Darwin. And we start off with scientists just demolished Charles Darwin's theory of evolution again. Okay. So before I pull up this article from the journal, right? I could just read it from the book, but before I go into it, let me just remind you, right? a part of the theory with the superior races part buried in there. Remember, the superior races part has to be buried in there or you lose sight of the whole program. Is the creation, because the creation was imperfect from the start, because God didn't do the perfect God didn't create the perfect being from the start, right? This is a biogenesis where there's a lot of mistakes going on and stuff is just, working itself out kind of, so it's getting better. Each genetic mutation, the creature is getting better than the last one. And so there was some verbiage in the book where it's the job of the new species to even kill off the old species. Yeah. Some crazy verbiage in this Charles Darwin's, in this Darwin book. So here's how it resurfaces, right? Here's how it resurfaces in the scientific community, right? Because the genetic mutation theory grew legs. And then became the cancer theory. Genetic mutation. After they killed and buried Charles Darwin's theory with Charles Darwin, they dug up Darwin, shotgunned his theory to death, put his theory inside the grave with him, and then buried. They came back with the theory, genetic mutation with cancer. Now, this theory, the genetic mutation theory of cancer, has also been shotgunned to death. Oh, genetic. They done shotgun this to death. The genetic mutation theory of cancer is no longer a real thing. That is no longer a real thing. That is not science. As of, what's today's date? May 2nd, 2025. Genetic mutation theory of cancer. That is no longer science. That has been thoroughly debunked. Right? So it's crazy. It's like this genetic mutation theory just gets bodied wherever it shows up. Like, but hold on. Because here's how Charles Darwin came back into play. So remember, genetic mutation starts out with Darwin, gets killed, boop, disappears a little bit, and then pops back up with cancer. So the theory of cancer is that cancer cells have mutations in the DNA, and those mutations in the DNA cause the cell to become cancerous. Right? And we spend trillions of dollars on research on it, and pretty soon they find cancer genes. These are called oncogenes, right? And so, boom, now they get even more entrenched in the study of this genetic mutation theory, and they invent doctors and schools and all that around this new idea. So now you have a thing called oncologists, right? An oncologist is a cancer doctor or a cancer professor, right? It's somebody who's, dedicated to the study of cancer. It's oncology, right? So you go to hospitals, they'll have, when you go to a lot of hospitals, right? You get in the hospital in the elevator, right? Some of those floors, they got to have a key to go on it. Right? When you get in the hospital, you can't just press all the buttons. Like if you try to go in the hospital and press all the buttons, some of them will light up, but some of them won't light up because you need the key. Like they got to take you to those floors. Those locked off floors are where the oncology wards are. We hide cancer from people because cancer messes with people's money. Cancer messes with people's money because almost everybody that has cancer has a story about their cancer. And if all those stories hit the public, a lot of everyday commerce was shut down. Yeah. Yeah, the cigarette business would all but disappear if you know, like it's yeah. So anyway, so genetic mutation theory resurfaces, has cancer, oncology, boom, it's taking on a new life, it's thriving, you know, it's living, it had a BBL. Yeah, the genetic mutation theory had a BBL. Had a whole body redo. You know what I'm saying? Face done, body done, everything. Genetic mutation. All of a sudden, beautiful, living their best life. And then the monkeys came back into play. The monkeys came back into play. And then all of a sudden, genetic mutation was exposed. It was exposed. Like you ever see one of those movies? You ever see one of those movies where somebody like goes into a new town and then they got a fake identity? Oh, have y'all seen this series? It's called You. The name of the show is called You. It's about a murdering like con artist that goes to different towns and fakes his identity. And then he found a girlfriend who's like crazy like him, and she's murdering and going to towns faking her identity. And then when people find out who they really are, they gotta like kill the people that find out who they really are. Like, so genetic mutation left Darwin's theory, remarried to cancer under a fake alias. And then the monkeys outed genetic mutation. The monkey's like, hey, I recognize you from somewhere. Hold up, wait a minute. Don't we know her? She's like, I do know you. Wait a minute. You that genetic, you that loss of information. Yeah, I know you. That is you. That's what happened, right? And so, what are you talking about, Inky? Just spit it out. Okay, so what happened was, I don't know, we had 50, 60, 70 years of cancer, genetic mutation going strong. Maybe a little bit more than that. No, because just Carl Landsteiner figured out the blood early 1900s. We're just going to say 70 years going strong. Anyway, at some point not too long ago, some brave genius jumped on the scene. Not me, but some other brave soul. God bless them, wherever they are. I don't even know who this person is, but God bless their soul. They jumped on the scene and said, hey, if we are created better than the black folks, who was created better than the Neanderthal, who was created better than the monkeys, how come it is the monkeys aren't getting cancer? Shh. You hear that? Look. Shh. Do you hear that? So quiet you could almost hear my heartbeat, right? That's what happened in the scientific community. Hey, they said, hold on. What do you mean the monkeys is not getting cancer? Yeah, well, the carcinomas, I mean, yeah. The chimps got 99% of the human DNA. So technically, chimps should be getting like 99% of the same cancers that we getting. They got 99% the same DNA. So if we feed them and we let them live in environments like us, and we start trying to teach them how to walk, talk, and do whatever it is, and whatever, bringing them into folks, bringing chimps in their house and all, all this, we're gonna put the whole play together. The chimps should be getting cancer. Yeah, they should be getting 99, at least 99% of it, because we got 99%. They throw that out you. They hit you with that quick. Oh yeah, the theory of genetic mutation. We share 99% of our DNA with the chimps. Yeah, we share 99% of our DNA with the chimps and the bonobos. They come with that quick in the bonobos. Bonobos, like what? What? So how come the chimps don't get? Let me help y'all folks out all the way in the back, the slow folks. So remember, we are supposed to come from the monkeys, the great apes, or at least that was one of the remixes. Once the monkeys got debunked and they threw great ape, like, oh, no. It's not that we come from the monkeys. It's that the monkeys come from an ancestor that we also come from that ancestor. And you'd be like, all right, well, who is that ancestor? Well, we're still working that out, because there's a lot of hominid. So there's the hominid species, and there's multiple variations there's multiple variations of hominids. So, yeah. So we're supposed to have came from the monkeys, right? By genetic mutation. So the monkeys are supposed to be getting genetic mutations, which lead to us. Okay? So monkeys are having genetic mutations, which is leading to creations of new types of monkeys. The crazy thing is, you don't see any genetic mutations leading to new types of monkeys today. Nor do you see genetic mutations leading to monkeys like getting taller, their spine changing, and then, like getting a degree at college and driving a car. Like you don't see. But so we start as genetic mutations of the monkeys. And then so the genetic mutations that we're having don't lead to new species either. The genetic mutations that the monkeys had led to us. But the genetic mutations that we have lead to cancer. It only leads to our death. It doesn't lead to a human with wings. Right? We don't see a human with all these different genetic mutations that we've had. And it's thousands of them, into the millions. Yeah, they're going into the millions. We haven't seen humans turn into a new species yet, right? And guess what? We haven't seen the chimps present our cancers. I don't know who that guy is, but listen to me. I would love to have been that guy. That he silenced the whole globe. It was like a global blackout in the science community. Say, hey, anybody ever check on the monkeys? Do you know that the monkeys aren't getting these cancers? Yeah, the monkeys aren't getting these cancers like we're getting these cancers. Like if the monkeys had a higher mutation rate that led to the creation of us, how come they're not having these cancers, especially if we are the dominant species genetically? If we share 99% of our DNA and we're the dominant species, how come we have all the mistakes in our genome that are causing cancer and not them? Do you see that? So once again, pull Darwin out of the grave. I don't even know what's left to do to his body after he'd been killed all these many times. Stabbed, head cut off, burned, hung, shot, knifed, choked, strangled, whatever you could think of to kill a person. Like, put something in, they, slipped him a Mickey. Like, they killed Darwin's theory a zillion times, put him back in his grave, dug him up, killed him, put him back. Right? Now, once that happens, we just left with this. Once that happens, we just left with this. I only debate my equals. Everybody else I teach. Once that happens, we just left with this, right? And so what happens with cancer? Well, a few things happen with cancer cells. Remember, a few things happen with the cancer theory of genetic mutation, right? Well, one thing was they found cancer cells with no mutations. Just hold on to that and just deal with that for a second. Think about that. They found cancer cells with no mutations. I think that right there that part. But then they also found cancer mutations, right? Or oncogenes. They found oncogenes, right? Cancer mutation genes are called oncogenes, right? In case you don't know, right? But they found them in healthy cells. Matter of fact, we're not even gonna. I was gonna put number 1 and number 2 right here, but we're not even gonna put 1 and 2 right there. Just for the love of the family that knows this is an inside joke. If you buy the books, you know what that is. If not, you don't know what that is. We're just gonna say P and Q. If P, then Q. So they found cancer cells that had no mutations. Then they had healthy cells that had plenty of cancer type mutations, but they were still healthy. This was the end. This was the end of an era. This was the end of an era. This was the end of an era. That's why I say all the time, it's scary, the world we live in, but it's a great time to be alive. We're living in one of those times that they're going to talk about forever. This is one of the forever times, right? Like right now, when we look back on history, there's a lot of blank, quiet space. There's times with respectfully to our ancestors, because they was alive too. Obviously, if you're alive today, you had ancestors, but they wasn't doing anything noteworthy. Like they were just, alive. There was nothing planetarily game changing for better or for worse happening. Like it was quiet. Like ain't nothing going on that block. They quiet over there, right? Well, this time period we live in, it's loud. Whether we live in infamy or whether we live famously, this time period will be known. This will go down in history, right? Lots of things are changing, right? And this is one of them. The idea that cancer, right? The idea that cancer is a genetic mutation disease. That is over. That is over. It has shifted 100% full speed into the cancer is a metabolic disease space. And now everybody is trying to jump on the Thomas Seyfried boat. Everybody. I remember when I started first recommending that book to folks, when the book was reasonably priced, it was like 30, 40 bucks. Then it crept on up to like 60, 70, hit that hundo, and it just kept on going. Now everybody's talking Thomas Seyfried, Thomas Seyfried, Thomas Seyfried, right? And Thomas Seyfried got a vibe. I spent a long time reading his book. His book is a difficult book to read. For me, it was difficult. I had to work my way through it. It was just science on top of science on top of science. Y'all know how y'all be saying, yo, Inky, I hate reading these articles. In my books have me, and then you got a whole bunch of like etymology stuff, dictionary stuff, encyclopedia, Wikipedia, Webster's, National Library of Medicine. Like you got a bunch of reference material, articles and all kinds of stuff, right? Because I say stuff, people want to know if, somebody that they can believe can validate it, right? So, we have lots of that. We have lots of that in there, right? So Thomas Seyfried, cancer. Now, listen, for the smart people, right? The if P then Q people, the smart people, we already knew cancer was linked to metabolism and metabolic disease because diabetes. Like you didn't even have to say nothing else. Diabetes. Whoop. Diabetes. Diabetes causes cancer. You get diabetes, your risk of every type of cancer shoots through the roof. So right there, it's easy for John Q. Public to just deduce the media. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, well then clearly cancer must be related to metabolic disease because Having metabolic disease greatly increases your what? Probability. See, this is why you got to get the Ma'at book, the probability book, right? This where all this start coming into play. In fact, that's how they figured this cancer. That's how the cancer thing got debunked, because they start doing the math, right? They start calculating the probability based on particular gene mutations that they were logging, right? Because they were logging genetic mutations. And there's a bunch of other things that debunk this idea. There's a bunch of other stuff. It's not just these two things. There's a bunch of stuff, right? Because first, the genetic mutation theory was about having a genetic mutation causing cancer. Then they started to notice that there was no set number of genetic mutations that caused the cell to become cancerous. So we blew right through the whole phase of, what was this? And this was a strong phase. This lasts for a long time. There's still pockets of people still teaching this. Hold on, it's going to come back to. I be telling folks I done forgot more about health than they will ever learn. Oh, I got it. Wait. Initiators and promoters. I was even in that school. I ain't gonna lie. I was in that school. That school had me for a minute. That's the initiators and the promoters. I was like, okay. But that was a Band-Aid. That was a remix, because the genetic mutation theory was falling flat on its face. And so they was like, well, even if you have the genetic mutations, you might not still have the cancer. Like, you might be almost cancerous, like how this came with that. Be you pre-diabetic, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you like pre-cancerous, like you might want to start taking some. See how all roads lead to Wakanda? Like all roads lead to profit, right? So yeah, that didn't work out. That didn't work out because then other dynamics came into play that the institution is uncomfortable with. Like, wait a minute. So if I'm precancerous and here's the variable for me becoming cancerous, if I change that, am I curing cancer without medicine or surgery? They're like, wait, cut the tape. Cut the tape. Cut the tape. So certain ideas like that had to be recalled for other reasons. Like, wait, no, we can't leave that on the books, because then that opens up the door. That opens up the door for other vampires. We don't want that door to open up, right? Which is the reason why they don't want the metabolic disease door to open up, because everybody knows that you can reverse metabolic disease. You can prevent metabolic disease. You can prevent and or reverse metabolic disease. So if cancer begins to be fully accepted as a metabolic disease, if P, then Q, it's getting ready to get crazy out there. Because then they're going to have to say all of the people that they thought was crazy before, oh, well, there's a lady, hold on. There's a lady on the internet. Man, and I thought I saved this video. Let me see if I saved this video. I wanted to show y'all this video. Just as an example, let me see if I saved this video. No, I must not have saved it. Oh, wait. Dang, it tried to switch the channel I'm on right now. Okay, hold on. Let me see something. Give me a second. Let me see if I saved this video.
Myron!
Dude, I can't stand.
Myron!
What?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Everybody read no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Well, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks. What
You
talking
called yesterday too. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry. Biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even a, first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, ain't nothing nasty about this. So what you talking about? I got all the books right here. What you talking about?
Myron, you don't even know how to read. Every time we get mail, you bring it to me. You think I don't know that?
I got hooked on Phoenix. Now, what you talking about? I was hooked on Phoenix, so I know how to read.
As of when? As of when? Because first of all, hooked on phonics, I believe it's for kids. There's no such thing as hooked on Phoenix. And if I recall, you're the same person that thought reindeer was pronounced reender, and you're the same person that thought pigeon was pronounced piggion. So it makes sense that you went to hooked on Phoenix.
Man, such a dumbass.
No,
you always trying to say somebody can't read. I know exactly what I'm talking about, man. I'm reading the book. I got the goddamn receipt right here. I got the goddamn receipt right here for the books. What you talking about?
Well, you need to return them for somebody who know how to read them. And I still don't. It's probably all type of stuff in the inside of the books, Myron. That's how sneaky you are. Give me the books. Give me the books, Myron.
Hell no.
Give me the books, Myron. Give me the books, Myron.
I'm not giving you. No, I got these books off Amazon. I'm not giving you the books. Ain't that no?
Yo, well, bye. Bye.
I've been in this game. Yeah, your animals to the shit. Animal, baby. The gods have blessed us. We must act now. We must act now to save us, to save our souls.
Man, I cannot find this lady, but it's a guarantee y'all been watching this lady on the internet for sure, right? And there's a video, and I be having YouTube running in the back of running, movies or whatever, just stuff playing, because I need my mind to distract sometime while I'm typing these, while I'm typing. And so, yeah, and 10 years ago, I was out here debunking, vitamins and, telling people they don't need vitamins and blah, 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 blah. And now here I am 10 years later telling people that, yeah, they need to have their vitamins and boo, boo, boo. And I wish I had that video, because this lady be on those big platforms, CEO, millionaire, Andrew Huberman, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying to myself, this is why people have to have the information, because this woman is on these big platforms with 2, 3, 4 million people watching, and she's explaining in a very matter-of-fact way, prancing, flashing her credentials on folks and blah, blah, blah. Here she come back 10 years later to say, I was wrong about, multivitamins, and, people need to have their, their water soluble vitamins and whatever. They're fat soluble, A, D, E, K, B, C, whatever, all your vitamins you need. I was wrong about telling people not to have their vitamins. You came back a decade later? This is what I'm saying about this health thing. People listening to her stopped taking vitamins for 10 years. For 10 years, according to her advice. She's coming back now saying, yeah, you need your vitamin. Well, now we don't find out cancer is related to metabolism. Now, we're not just finding out about it because the holistic community, we've been saying that forever, right? We've been saying that forever in the holistic. That's literally the fundamental basis of food is medicine, because food can't really be medicine unless the illness is metabolic, right? Because food is going to directly go through metabolism, right? So that's literally a fundamental aspect of holistic ideology or naturopathic ideology. So that's been around forever. Quietly, it's been embedded in the framework of science for almost 100 years, right? When Otto Warburg came out, and now to scam and sell products and all that, people have changed what Otto Warburg has said, to make it fit their narratives and all kinds of other stuff. But largely, Otto Warburg is still saying, cancer is metabolic disease, blah, 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 blah. Right? This is incredibly important because people come out and you go, and I'm really highlighting this. I try to give y'all a minute to let it breathe. Breathe out. 1 into the 2, and 2 into the 3, and then you gotta breathe. I try to give y'all a moment to just let that, because this is huge. This is huge. You know how many people died from cancer? How many families done lost people to cancer? They can't just step back and go, my bad. My bad. This whole time, what they said? You were supposed to get the onions and the kale. What they said? And what did we do? We put y'all on the what? It's going to get real different, real spooky, because certain things are fundamental building blocks of the scientific authority. So even when science finds out one of those fundamental building blocks is faulty, it's not just as easy as you would think for them to go ahead and replace it. They got to try to replace it in a way that nobody knows. So you can't just like pull out the faulty brick and slip the correct brick in there, like, slip in new reinforcement, because everybody gonna go, yo, what was that? You gotta try to put up an argument and make all these gradient slow changes over time just to get back to where you should be in the first place. That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now. And so look at that. It's not even 2 hours. I think we're making good time. So here's another test they ran. And this brings us around to this guy. Mitochondria, right? Mitochondria. So one of the directions they ran to for help, right, when DNA mutation was failing, right? And this is why I say the evolution folks, they get like 1,000 redo, like they can hit the reset button 1,000 times and their game never ends. It's like they just keep hitting the reset. Like, but when the DNA mutation theory was beginning to fall on its face, and this is maybe a couple decades ago, it's when it was beginning to fall on its face, and they was finding that there was no set number of mutations that would make the cancer gene become the cell become cancerous. Like sometimes they will find cells with 12 mutations that have cancer, or 50 or 60 that had cancer, or even 70 mutations that was a healthy cell. Like crazy, right? So what they did to try to save face is they said, oh, well, you know what? Maybe we've been looking at the wrong source of DNA all this time. Maybe it's not the nuclear DNA, right? Maybe it's the mitochondrial DNA. Yeah, that's the ticket. Mitochondrial DNA. Yeah, that's the ticket right there. The mitochondrial DNA. That is the ticket right there. That's the ticket. And guess what? They started to cooking. When they switched it up, after they got debunked, let's make sure after they got debunked with nuclear DNA, right? They switched it over to mitochondrial DNA, right? And when they switched it over to mitochondrial DNA, right? When they switched it over to a mitochondrial DNA mutation, they ran some tests. And the test was positive, right? Here's the test they ran. They took cancer cells. They took the nuclear DNA from the cancer cells and put it to healthy cells. And guess what? They stayed healthy cells. So it was like, oh, it's clearly not this. So then they start taking mitochondria from cancer cells and transplanting those over to healthy cells. And guess what? They became cancerous. So they like, oh, we cooking. We cooking. We got this. We got this. We cooking. Yeah. We was wrong about the nuclear DNA. Now, nuclear DNA is the popular DNA you know about, right? Adenosine, like the 4 bases, right? That's with the winding, twisted DNA, histone. That's nuclear DNA. Mitochondria DNA is DNA that is supposedly passed down only through the moms, through your mitochondria. Okay, but so that was a whole vibe, and billions and bazillions, let's just say bazillions. Bazillions is better. Bazillions of dollars went into studying mitochondria DNA mutations causing cancer, right? And then you even had guys that was, geniuses because they had figured it out and blah, 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 blah. You never notice how when theories change, the geniuses of those theories, they just kind of ease back. You know that meme where Homer Simpson is stepping back into the bushes? Yeah, it'd be like geniuses like, yeah, I'm such and such and such. And I came up with this. Then when that gets totally super like super debunked, it just step back into the bushes. So what happened is bazillions of dollars goes into the theory, to the idea. And what they find out is it has nothing to do with the mitochondrial DNA. It has nothing to do with the mitochondrial DNA, at least not directly. Not directly. Right? What's happening is the mitochondria itself the pattern of metabolism is the problem. Has nothing to do with the mitochondria DNA. Like the mitochondria themselves are not sick. They're not sick or mutated. They're not sick. They're not mutated. They're just producing energy differently. That's all. They're producing energy differently. Right? Remember, mitochondria is the site of all your eating. All your eating goes to mitochondria, pretty much. Right? Cytochrome 1, cytochrome 2. Right? So you got oxidative phosphorylation. Right? And then you got the fermentation process, right? Which brings us all the way back around. Right? It brings us all the way back around to this book. See, this is why you need this book. You need this book right here. Fellow of the Craft, The Legend of Wuxia. It's on sale too. It was $1.99. It's on sale right now. This is why you need this book right here, right? Because the pattern of metabolism, and this is the crazy thing. This is what made it took me so long to get through this book. Let me see if I got this book in here. I might have took that book out of here. Is it in here? Let me see if I can find this book real quick.
Myron!
Oh,
Myron!
what?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Everybody read no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Wait, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks. What
You
talking
called yesterday too. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry. Biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, ain't nothing nasty about this. So what are you talking about? I got all the books right here. What are you talking about?
Myron, you don't even know how to read. Every time we get mail, you bring it to me. You think I don't know that?
I went to I got hooked on Phoenix. Now, what you talking about? I was hooked on Phoenix, so I know how to read.
As of when? As of when? Because first of all, hooked on phonics, I believe it's for kids. There's no such thing as hooked on Phoenix. And if I recall, you're the same person that thought reindeer was pronounced reender, and you're the same person that thought pigeon was pronounced piggion. So it makes sense that you went to hooked on Phoenix.
Man, such a dumbass.
No,
you always trying to say somebody can't read. I know exactly what I'm talking about, man. I'm reading the book.
This book right here. It took me such a long time to read this book. Oh my goodness. It came out in 2012. Bruh. It took me so long to read this book. I mean, it is tough. It's a tough read. It is just dry. There's zero personality. It's just biochemistry on top of biochemistry. And then after a while, you get so lost in abbreviations and AMP and this one and that, you know, PQQRPLM, this and that. you get, oh my God, it was just, I was feeling like Sanford and Son, like this is the big, but it was so much information. It was so much information that, you know, and, you know, real color diagrams where you can see, you know, the different types of cancers, and, you know, like it was just, it was work. You know what I'm saying? That I could really sink my teeth in. Like it was a tough book to read, but I'm saying all that to say, let's see how much this bad boy is selling for right now on Amazon. Let's see what they doing on Amazon. What y'all doing on Amazon with this book right here? Let's see. Okay, not bad. It's only 130 bucks. Yeah, it's only 130 bucks. Wow, that's crazy. They doing the ebook for 130. The ebook is never the same price as the actual book. That's crazy. That's letting you know the actual book getting ready to go up some more. Yeah, it's getting ready to go up some more. The actual book is always at least 2 to 3 times as much as the ebook, because the ebook is no material, right? But it's a big, thick book full of scientific gobbledygook and mumbo jumbo. I mean, it's all in line. It's all wise, right, and exact. I mean, it's missing some stuff. You know what I'm saying? And we'll get to that point in the conversation at some point. If not tonight, tomorrow, whatever the case may be. So it's missing some stuff, but it's all wise, right, and exact in terms of debunking the genetic mutate. Can you turn out all the lights, please? In terms of debunking the genetic mutation theories of cancer, right? But the crazy thing is, it's all this complicated science to bring us all the way back, full circle, back around to the legend of Wuxia. And what? Fermented fruit sugar. So this whole big textbook and all of the, you know, the hoopla surrounding Thomas Seyfried is him scientifically explaining the biochemistry of the legend of Wuxia. Fermented fruit sugar in the blood. Because what does fermented fruit sugar in the blood imply? Fermented fruit sugar in the blood implies that the mitochondria cannot perform oxidative phosphorylation. So your cell can't get energy from mitochondria. Or it does, but it's not enough to fully power the cell. Right? So your cells have to switch over. Your cells have to switch over to the fermentation cycle. And when your cells switch over to the fermentation cycle, that's when they become cancerous. I went through this whole book. I'm like, hold up. This sounds familiar. This sounds familiar. You done gave me this whole complicated. I'm talking about how many chapters is in this stupid book? You done gave me 20 chapters of the most complex P53 enzyme, blah, 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 all these different. To bring us down to glutamine, in fermentation. Right? So hundreds of billions into the trillions of dollars trying to cover up the truth, and you can't. The truth gonna rise to the surface. Comedic naturopathy. That's the story of mitochondria versus Charles Darwin and cancer. Right? Oh, and we're supposed to get to the Batana part of the story. We're supposed to get to the Batana part of the story. Let me see if we're going to get to the Batana part of the story tonight. I might just save the Batana story and just do that separate video. I think we might do that as a separate video. Yeah, we might have to do that as a separate video. Right? I think so. I think we got to do that as a separate video. Yeah, we got to do that as a separate video. True love shouldn't be so complicated. Yeah, we got to do that as a separate video. Because the whole idea, I mean, we could touch on a little, but the whole idea is one of the most powerful ways to repair mitochondria. What are you doing way down here? One of the most powerful ways to repair mitochondria metabolism. Right, and we'll get into it. Right. One of the most powerful ways to repair mitochondria metabolism. Mitochondria. Right, and we're gonna do it like this. Put a line right through it, and put cellular metabolism. So wait a minute, hold up. So you up late at night. That's your notes there, huh? Yo, this girl is hardcore. Yo, I know y'all be saying to yourself, wait a minute, isn't Kylie one of the little twins? How she be helping him write the books? Bro, she's dedicated. Y'all don't understand. She's just dedicated. She loved this. And she probably don't even understand half of what I'm saying, but she be taking notes, coming up with ideas. Dad, you said this on your lecture 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, because I got the notes right here. And so what you said about this, what you should do, Dad, is write about this and explain this and I'm like, I'm getting too much input from the 9-year-old not to put her down as an author, because then I'm stealing at that point, because she on it. And sometimes I'll be like, man, if you don't get your butt on out of here and do your own schoolwork, go do your own schoolwork. You're trying to do my schoolwork. Right? But anyway, cellular metabolism, right? One of the easiest. See, here's the thing. God has provided us with a lot of solutions, right? But sometimes we get in the way of the solution, right? Vitamin E. Vitamin E is one of the most powerful ways to repair cellular metabolism, right? So what happened to vitamin E? Right? Think about that. Like, what happened to vitamin E? Like, if vitamin E was a person, you would be like, yo, vitamin E fell off. Like, that's what we'd say. That's what we'd say about vitamin E. If vitamin E was somebody you knew, like somebody you know from back in the days, you know how you see somebody from your old school or your old neighborhood, and you'd be like, hey, y'all start talking, and then the first thing y'all do is like start asking about, friends or people y'all knew together. Like, oh, yo, what happened to Larry? Yo, man, Larry fell off, man. Larry can't play no ball no more, man. I seen Larry. Larry might have been like the best basketball player in the school or the neighborhood. Man, I seen Larry. Larry's about 300 pounds, man. Larry done fell off. Larry can't hoop, man. It's over for Larry. Yeah, man, I seen Larry. You know what I'm saying? Or you might see, like a pretty girl you remember. Oh, man, I seen Shorty, man. She fell off, man. She like 400 pounds, 16 children, 17 baby dad. She got 16 children with 17 baby daddies. Like, woo, she done fell off. She like, hold up, wait, that's too many baby daddy. Yeah, some of them not sure. some of them not sure, so she got possibles. You know what I'm saying? Like, if vitamin E was a person, you'd be like, yeah, vitamin E fell off, right? Because vitamin E quiet. You done heard about the miracles that vitamin A can do, and you're going blind. You got to get the lutein, the zeaxanthin, the this one, the that one, the vitamin A, right? Oh, if you're getting cancer, if you're getting COVID, if you're getting, all kind of diseases, you need vitamin D, right? You done heard, just now they had this whole miracle run of vitamin B3, right? Where they were saying, oh, you got to get the NMN, because NMN is the powerful form of NAD, and the NAD is the regular, but if you get the NMN, then you get the super strength steroid level. They banned us, get a supply now because they done banned it. Folks asking me about, I'm like, oh, you mean vitamin B3? They're like, no, Inky, this is NAD, this is NMN, this is. I'm like, yeah. Vitamin B3, yeah. God put that. It's in the produce section. Yeah, trust me. That's vitamin B3. Yeah. Cat's coming back like, oh, yo, you know what, Ink? That man, that's what they did say that. They said when I looked it up, it said that B3 is metabolized into NAD. And NAD is metabolized into NMN. I was like, yeah. That's what I told you. But we can go deeper than that because it starts with tryptophan. So tryptophan, tryptophan, then it metabolized to B3, then NAD, then, that's. But what happened to vitamin E? Vitamin E fell off. Here's what happened. Vitamin E and vitamin A was co-Ds at the same time. They was co-defendants. They both got caught on a murder case. Best way to explain it. Vitamin A and vitamin E was found to be causing people cancer. And so that went out through the public. Everybody was like, oh, yo, stop taking vitamin A. Stop taking vitamin E. They're giving people cancer. Vitamin E, vitamin A is giving people cancer. Stop taking vitamin E, vitamin A. But people's eyes going bad so much with cataracts and glaucoma and macular degenerative, like all kind of stuff. It just overrid the bad publicity, and vitamin A got popping again. Like, vitamin A Vitamin A is that one that was just like shook off the bad press, or maybe took the bad press and got pulled a Kanye. Like, listen, I'm gonna say I did the unthinkable, and then 2 weeks later, I'm dropping an album. Yeah. Vitamin E, on the other hand, vitamin E fell off. Vitamin E never recovered. Vitamin E went into the shadows. You only hear about vitamin E at like the Korean hair spots. They're like, no, you need vitamin E to make your hair grow. Yeah, vitamin E, just bust a capsule. It got so bad for vitamin E. Listen to this. It got so bad for vitamin E. The Korean folks at the beauty supply place was telling girls, instead of eating the capsule, to break open the capsule on their hair. Just bust open the capsule on your hair, because it's oil. It's a fat soluble vitamin, so it comes in oil. And it's like, just bust open the capsule and rub it in your scalp. Yeah, just rub it in. You're like, well, you think it'll go to? If you think it's gonna make cancer on my braids, you think is it going? I don't want to have cancer on my braids. I gotta. Vitamin E is him, though. Vitamin E is him. Yeah. Vitamin E is him. Right? So what actually winds up being the problem is that the same thing with vitamin D. For whatever reason, right? It can't pinpoint the reason. I have my theory on it, but there hasn't been anything pinpointed to validate, invalidate, whatever. But the same thing with vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, and vitamin A. All of the fat-soluble vitamins, synthetic forms of the fat-soluble vitamins only work until a certain point, and they become toxic in your body. And that toxicity level does not exist with the natural one. Meaning, there's a level of vitamin D3 supplement that you could take, right? And vitamin D3 will build up in your body. And there's a point where that vitamin D3 will become toxic. Period. Right? The same thing with synthetic vitamin A, synthetic vitamin K, synthetic vitamin E. All of them have a level where if you get too much, it'll become toxic. This doesn't exist in the natural form. It doesn't exist in the natural form, at least not in the same format, right? Because there are natural buffers to stop you from reaching certain plateaus with natural compounds, right? Yeah, your body has natural ways to deal with certain things. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, for the most part, all of these issues with the fat-soluble vitamins only exist in the synthetic form of the vitamins. And that has to do a lot with the material that they're using to make these vitamins, which y'all know we went over, right? We went over in the book. They was using a lot of oil derivatives, right? From the gasoline and oil industry, like waste products, they was using to repackage waste products as vitamins, straight from the Rockefeller playbook, right? So a lot of these things and wound up even in small doses being toxic, but not toxic enough to cause a problem in your body, right? Your body can get rid of it. But when it builds up to a high amount, problem presents itself. So you realize it's not even really what it's supposed to be. It's not even really what it's supposed to be. It's a synthetic form of something that's close. It's close, But when it goes into this supercomputer that we call the body, it can't be close. Close ain't good enough. It got to be it. It got to be him, right? And so there's that. And then with vitamin E, it was even worse because it's levels to vitamin E. It's 8 different types of vitamin E. So not only is the synthetic not the same as or good as or even close to as potent as the original, the real natural vitamin E, well, they was synthetically duplicating the one with the lowest potency. They was synthetically duplicating the one with the lowest potency, right? That's like taking a $50 bill and gambling to win $10. Like, hold up, wait a minute. So if I win, I get $10. If you win, you get my whole $50. Okay, wait a minute. Didn't Inky say to get that probability? But what? That don't. So I'm gonna risk $50 to win 10, and you're gonna risk your 10 against my 50. Yeah, I don't. This ain't. This ain't working. That don't. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and just put that 50 back inside my pocket right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that 50 back. It was kind of like upside down odds with the. Because you're getting the worst, not the worst, but the least powerful antioxidant form of vitamin E, and duplicating that ain't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, right? So that wasn't even, so that's where vitamin E is getting ready to come into the story. Right? That's where vitamin E is getting ready to come into the story. And then when vitamin E comes into the story, that's where Batana oil comes into the story. Right? Because Batana oil is the most pure natural source of vitamin E. Yeah. Batana oil is the most pure natural source of vitamin E. Right? And that's where it gets crazy, because folks got that burnt, they got that dookie. you can't eat that stuff. People that get my Batana oil, they know. They like, nah, you don't. It smells fresh. It smells amazing. Yeah, we all do. Everybody in my household, I eat it, I feed it to my children, put it in their hair, my hair. Yeah, everybody's. 0 carcinogens. Right? Got the analysis of it, you know what I'm saying? The full breakdown. But that's the most powerful natural source of vitamin E. And vitamin E just so happens to be the most powerful cellular metabolism regenerator. If P, then Q, right? So how does that work? Because remember, and this kind of bleeds us into the conversation of bioelectricity, right? This bleeds us into that conversation, because bioelectricity is about membrane potentials. It's all about membranes. Yeah. Bioelectricity is all about membranes. You got basically 3 sources of bioelectricity, right? One is in the actual water itself, right? You know, the Inky cycle. That's the Inky cycle. Put that in your back pocket for now. The other 2 are the cell membrane and the mitochondria membrane, right? The mitochondria membrane is where the electron transport chain is happening. Your cells have their own little transport chain, but because they're larger, they use larger size particles. That's the only difference between your cell membrane and mitochondria cell membrane. I want you to get this. This is a good point to finish on. Right? This is a good point to finish on. Hold on. This is a good point to finish on. Look. Your cells are big. Inside your cell, you got the little mitochondria floating around, right? So your cell uses the whole atom. Mitochondria cell uses the electron and the proton. Right? Electrons and protons make up atoms. Your cell membrane uses the atoms to generate electricity. Mitochondria is much smaller. Their cell membranes use the electrons and the protons to generate electricity. Right? Now, vitamin E repairs the membranes. See how that goes? Vitamin E repairs the membranes. So when the membranes are repaired, bioelectricity is repaired, or the process of producing bioelectricity, right? The electron transport chain is embedded in the membrane of the mitochondria, right? They're little proteins, right? Little heme groups in the mitochondria membrane. Inside your cell membrane, you got larger protein, channels, different little channels, gap junctions, or whatever the case may be. But all of these channels are for charged ions, atoms to come through. And when you get a whole bunch, you change the potential of the cell, negative 70 millivolts, and blah, blah, blah. We get all the way into that combo, right? But vitamin E does that. And the best, most potent natural source of it is the Batana oil. Not that stuff, not that White Star. Only old folks know that. Not that White Star. Yeah, that's the Nas album. But no, not that stuff that smell like burnt coffee. That burnt coffee stuff, that's carcinogenic. It's not that.